Hello everyone, Trance here, and welcome to another one of my build videos. Today we're going to be on the Magicka Nightblade, and this is going to be for Battlegrounds and non-CP, although this build would definitely work in Champion Point campaigns. I just like playing in Battlegrounds right now, so that's what I made the build for. We're going to be talking about our gear, our playstyle, and all the skills, and all consumables and everything we use to get it going. So let's get our buffs up and check it out. So we look at our character sheet. We've got our High Elf Nightblade here, just over 30k Magicka, but we have a really large health pool as well with just under 24k. And then we have 10k stamina, which in Battlegrounds, if you don't have more than 10k stamina on a magic build, you're going to have a bad time. Our recovery is also really high, and keep in mind that's with siphoning attacks as well. Then our spell crit, which is at 41%, which is high, but that's going to play into the build and the gear setups that we're going to be using. Our spell damage is also high, just at 2400, but because of the dots and the proc sets that we're using, it's strong. Then if we hit it again, we can see our spell and physical resistance is really, really high, and that's for a Magicka Nightblade. So we're tanky and we're able to do damage. And because, if you look, we're using our Shadowy Disguise, we are able to use the Shadow ability that gives our Shadow Barrier buff right here for 7.5 seconds, all of our major resolves and major ward. And an interesting thing to note is we're using Fortified Brass, and the 5-piece bonus that adds physical and spell resistance, that's not the major ward and major resolve, so that stacks on top of both these buffs, making us very, very tanky. And then we've got our minor buffs right here from Mirage as well. So we are actually really, really tanky in this build. So let's talk about all of our gear. So we're using 5 Fortified Brass right here, and I like this set on a lot of magic builds because we're able to get the tankiness from heavy armor with Fortified Brass without actually running heavy armor, which means we can get all of our juicy light armor passives. If you look right here, Magicka Recovery, Magicka Cost of Spells, which is huge after they removed that from the Champion Point tree. Even though we're not in Battlegrounds, it's still really strong. Then our extra spell resistance, spell crit, which is a big thing, and then spell pen. Look at that. That's almost 5k spell pen right there. That stacked on top of other buffs is really, really strong. Then we're using Caliron's Legacy with it. So I didn't have a third ring, so I just made a Fortified Brass Triune ring. Then we're using Caliron's Legacy, which is really very strong. I like Caliron's Legacy, especially because it's a proc set. So if we read the buffs here on all of our sets, we've got Fortified Brass, giving us max health, physical spell, and then the 5-piece bonus as extra spell and physical resistance. Then we've got Caliron's Legacy here, giving us a 2 and 4 spell crit bonus, which plays into the 5-piece, and then a 3-piece spell damage. And if you read the 5-piece bonus, when you deal critical damage with a single target magic ability, you launch a fire, ice, shock, or disease ball at the target that deals 14k damage. And if you look, that's not really a proc chance, because it's not like 10, 20, 30%. It's just when you deal critical damage. So whatever the chance of dealing critical damage is, which in our case as a Magicka Nightblade, if we hit Shadowy Disguise, your next direct damage attack used within 3 seconds will always be a critical strike. So that removes the chance there. It's not really a chance, it's just guaranteed to happen after we hit our Shadowy Disguise. So it works well with Caliron's Legacy. And then also Scoria is strong also because of the dots that we're going to be using on it. Alright, so as far as traits go, I would go a mixture of Infused and Impen. Try and get more Impen if you want, because I like this build to be super tanky. It's really strong. And then we're going 1 Triune here because I had to make the ring, and I always recommend Triune for PvP. Then we've got our Fortified Brass Inferno and Resto Staff, both infused. You could probably make this Precise or Nern. I just made it infused by accident. So we've got our infused. And if you look at the glyph on the Inferno Staff, it's the undead one where it does 7k Magicka damage to undead and Daedra. I mean, there's a lot of undead and Daedra running around in Battlegrounds, so it's really strong. It also reduces the cooldown on it. So I would recommend using that glyph over pretty much anything. And then you always want the Inferno Staff. I mean, you could use the Shock Staff, but I like Inferno because of the knockback. Alright, so let's talk about our skills. So like I was saying before, we're using Shadowy Disguise. That's part of our build because it gives you invisibility, but also gives you the critical strike chance at 100%, proccing out Caliron's Legacy. Then we're using our Swallow Soul. I mean, you could use Funnel Health for more group healing, but I like Swallow Soul because of the minor vitality that it gives. Then, just because Nightblade passives are so ridiculous, the Siphoning one is, so you slot a siphoning ability, you get max magicka, so you always want one of these on your front bar, getting 8%. Then you get increased healing done for each siphoning ability slotted, we have 2. And then transfer is each time you activate Swallow Soul, or any siphoning ability, which is Swallow Souls are spammable, you gain ultimate. Then our Flame Reach here is our stun and knocks back the enemy. It's strong and it does a dot, proccing Scoria on it. Then Crippling Grasp is another dot as well, proccing Scoria, but it's strong because it does a lot of damage and reduces their movement speed, and also gives you Major Expedition. And this you can see that Zas has no idea what's going on when it comes to the snares. Is if you read this, it immobilizes them and reduces their movement speed by 40%. So it reduces theirs by 40%. Again, it's not a buff or a debuff that it applies, not a category. It's just by 40%, so it stacks with other movement speed. That comes into play later. And then it also gives you Major Expedition, which is a buff category. So it gives them 40% movement speed reduction and increases your movement speed by 30%. Then we've got our Inner Light, which increases the proc chance of Calurons, even though we really don't need it. And we've got our Incap right here. I mean, you could go the other morph, but I like Incap just because it stuns and gives them Major Defile. And if everyone's aware of this, so ultimates scale off your higher resource pool, not... they just scale off your highest resource pool. Not if it's Incap and its disease damage doesn't scale off stamina and weapon damage. And our resource pool happens to be Magicka and spell damage that's higher, so that's what it scales off of. And we're also not using champion points, so it's not affected by those modifiers also. Then we go to our back bar, our resto bar. We've got Merciless. I mean, you could play Merciless on the front bar and put Crippling Grasp on the back bar. I just like putting it on my back bar because I don't really, although I don't proc my Assassin's Will and use it enough, but I like having it on my back bar. Then, if you look, it reduces their movement speed again by 40%. So that's 40% here and another 40%. So that's 80% movement speed reduction. Then Shadowy Image is a really, really strong ability. Gives minor maim to the enemy, but also it allows you to teleport in and out and just cut your enemies like crazy. I mean, we all know about these Magicka Nightblades that are really good with Image, and I think I'm one of those that can just avoid damage. I mean, my tip to getting good with Shadow Image is just play like a couple Battlegrounds, or just go into Cyrodiil and just mess with people with Shadow Image and try to avoid damage and try to just not die from it. That's how I would recommend is getting good with it. Is if you just cast it and just teleport around and just mess with people to realize how powerful it is. So that's what I did to get good with it. I would recommend that as well. Healing Ward, it's a strong heal. So the best thing to do is to cast Healing Ward on yourself when you're at low health, and then hit your Swallow Soul hot on them, and then you go into stealth while you're still restoring your health from the hot. After that, we got a Mirage. I like it because it gives us dodge chance, and then gives our minor resolve and minor ward, so all of our minor resistance buffs. Then we've got our siphoning attacks, which is great for our sustain because we're going to be doing a lot of light attacks since they buff them and they restore resources. I mean, I like Soul Tether here. You could use a different ability. You could use the Resto ulti, but I like Soul Tether because it does damage as well as healing you. And it's really strong. And it's 150 ultimate, but I like this ability as well. I mean, there's other things you could use, like I said, the Resto ulti. I just like Soul Tether. Alright. Now let's talk about our Mundus. I go with the Atronach. I mean, I always go with the Recovery, the Atronach or Serpent most of the time in Battlegrounds, because we really all have sustain problems in Battlegrounds because there's no champion points. So I went with the Atronach. Food we're going to be using is our Clockwork Citrus Fillet, our gold one. If you don't have access to that, you can use Witch Mothers, but this one's always going to be the strongest because it gives more higher resource pools and more recovery and health. As far as our race here, I like a high elf for this because of our recovery and all of our max stat pools that you get from being a high elf. Flame Frost and Shock, which buffs this right here, Flame Reach. Then our increased recovery and max Magicka. But I mean, it could work if you want to be a Breton. Argonian would definitely be a strong choice as well. I would recommend that. But I personally want this to be a high elf. If we go to our potions, I'm using spell power pots here because the one bad thing about Nightbladed is you have to use this go right here, Sap Essence, if you want to get your major sorcery. or you could use your entropy. So I think the best way to do it is to use your spell power pots to be able to get it, those buffs. So the playstyle that we want to put all of our buffs up, and then we're going to enter cloak, hit him with our funnel health or swallow soul, then we can stun him with our flame reach, hit him with our crippling grasp, and then we move in close with another shadowy disguise, and we're able to hit him with an incap, which procs our Calurons, and hopefully Escoria has gone off by that time, and then they should be dead. I mean, if not, you'll probably have a Merciless proc, and they'll be on low health. So that's the playstyle I use, and the gear setup. Let me know what you think about it, if you would change anything, and I'll be posting more videos soon.